In the winter of 1884 to 1885, a small group of European diplomats gathered in a lavish Berlin chancellery to decide the fate of an entire continent. Over the course of roughly 100 days, these 14 men, representing the most powerful nations of Europe, redrew the map of Africa with little regard for its peoples, cultures, or histories. In the late 19th century, Europe was a hotbed of imperial ambition. Industrial revolutions had fueled economic growth, and nations such as Britain, France, and Germany were eager for new markets, resources, and prestige. Africa, with its vast wealth of rubber, ivory, gold, and diamonds, became the ultimate prize. Yet, until the 1870s, much of the continent remained uncharted by Europeans, its interior shielded by disease, geography, and resilient African societies. By 1884, however, technological advancements, such as quinine to combat malaria and steamships to navigate rivers, had cracked open Africa's interior, sparking a frenzied race among European powers to claim its riches. This race threatened to destabilize Europe itself. Rivalries over African territories risked escalating into military conflicts, particularly between Britain, France, and the emerging power of Germany. To prevent war and regulate the colonial scramble, Otto von Bismarck, the iron-fisted chancellor of the newly unified Germany, called for a conference in Berlin. Held from November 15, 1884, to February 26, 1885, the Berlin Conference brought together representatives from 14 nations, including Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, Belgium, and the United States, though the US played a minor role. Notably absent were any African representatives, an omission that spoke volumes about the conference's priorities. The official agenda was cloaked in humanitarian rhetoric. The powers claimed they were meeting to end the slave trade, promote free trade, and bring civilization to Africa. But beneath this veneer lay a more cynical motive: to divide Africa's land and resources without sparking European wars. One of the conference's lesser-known outcomes was the establishment of the principle of effective occupation, which required nations to prove control over claimed territories through treaties, settlements, or military presence. This rule incentivized a rush to secure African land, often through deception or force. A striking yet often overlooked fact is the brevity and swiftness of this meeting. Just 14 men, representing their governments, sat around a table in Berlin's opulent Wilhelmstrasse chancellery. In roughly 100 days, they negotiated, debated, and signed agreements that would affect 90% of Africa's territory. The speed was staggering. Before 1884, Europeans controlled about 10% of Africa. Within 15 years, that figure soared to 90%. The conference's efficiency was matched only by its audacity, as these men, with little knowledge of Africa's complex societies, drew borders that ignored ethnic, linguistic, and cultural realities. The Berlin Conference was not just a diplomatic summit. It was a turning point that formalized imperialism's grip on Africa. It set the stage for exploitation on an unprecedented scale, with one man, King Leopold II of Belgium, emerging as its most notorious beneficiary. At the heart of the Berlin Conference was a figure whose influence loomed larger than his small nation suggested: King Leopold II of Belgium. A cunning and ambitious monarch, Leopold saw the conference as an opportunity to carve out a personal empire in Africa. While other powers sought colonies for national glory, Leopold pursued the Congo as a private venture, a fact that makes his role both unique and chilling. His manipulation of the conference's proceedings and the humanitarian facade he crafted are among the event's darkest secrets. Leopold positioned himself as a philanthropist, claiming his interest in the Congo was to abolish slavery and bring progress to its people. He lobbied tirelessly before and during the conference, leveraging his wealth and connections to win support. The result was the creation of the Congo Free State, a territory 76 times larger than Belgium itself, granted to Leopold not as a Belgian colony but as his personal property. This unprecedented arrangement, endorsed by the conference, gave Leopold unchecked power over an area rich in rubber and ivory, resources in high demand during the industrial boom. What followed was one of history's most brutal colonial regimes. Far from the humanitarian utopia Leopold promised, the Congo Free State became a nightmare of exploitation. Leopold's agents, operating under the force public, a private army, imposed harsh rubber quotas on Congolese communities. Failure to meet quotas resulted in horrific punishments. Villages were burned, hands were amputated, and families were massacred. A lesser-known but gut-wrenching fact is that Leopold's regime pioneered the practice of severing hands as proof of enforcement. Soldiers had to present a hand for each bullet spent to prevent ammunition waste. This led to baskets of severed hands becoming a grim currency in the Congo. The human toll was staggering. Historians estimate that between 1885 and 1908, Leopold's rule caused the deaths of approximately 10 million Congolese, half the region's population, through violence, starvation, and disease. These figures, often overshadowed by the broader narrative of colonial Africa, highlight the Congo Free State as one of the deadliest episodes of imperialism. Yet, at the Berlin Conference, Leopold's eloquence and promises of free trade and missionary work masked his true intentions. He convinced the 14 men at the table to hand him a territory larger than Western Europe, with no oversight or accountability. Leopold's success at Berlin was a masterclass in deception. He used the conference's humanitarian rhetoric to his advantage, presenting himself as a benevolent ruler while orchestrating a land grab of epic proportions. The Congo Free State became a symbol of the conference's moral failure, a moment when Europe's powers, blinded by greed and competition, enabled one man's tyranny. But the Congo was only one part of the broader tragedy. The borders drawn in Berlin would have consequences that rippled far beyond Leopold's reign. The Berlin Conference's most enduring legacy is the map it produced, a patchwork of colonial territories that paid no heed to Africa's cultural, ethnic, or geographic realities. The 14 men in Berlin, armed with incomplete maps and fueled by imperial ambition, drew straight lines across the continent, splitting tribes, merging rivals, and creating nations that existed only on paper. These arbitrary borders, finalized in just 100 days, reshaped Africa's destiny and sowed the seeds of conflicts that persist to this day. One striking example is the division of the Bakongo people, whose historic kingdom was sliced across 3 colonial territories: Belgian Congo, French Congo, and Portuguese Angola. This fragmentation separated families and disrupted trade networks, creating tensions that fueled rebellions and, later, modern conflicts in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Similarly, the Somali people were divided among British, Italian, and French colonies, a split that contributed to Somalia's instability in the 20th century. These borders were not accidents but deliberate choices made with minimal understanding of Africa's diversity. Over 2,000 ethnic groups and 1,000 languages were ignored in favor of European convenience. Another lesser-known consequence was the conference's role in accelerating the scramble for Africa. The principle of effective occupation turned colonization into a race, as powers rushed to sign treaties or establish outposts to secure their claims. Many of these treaties were fraudulent, with African leaders tricked into signing documents they couldn't read, often in exchange for trivial goods like cloth, beads, or alcohol. For example, in what is now Zimbabwe, British agents secured mining rights from King Lobengula through a treaty he believed was a simple trade agreement. Such deceptions, enabled by the conference's rules, became a hallmark of colonial expansion. The economic impact was equally devastating. The conference prioritized free trade for Europeans, ensuring access to Africa's resources while stifling local economies. Colonial powers built infrastructure, like railways and ports, not to benefit Africans but to extract raw materials. In the Gold Coast, modern Ghana, British colonizers focused on cocoa and gold, leaving local farmers dependent on volatile global markets. This pattern of extraction, rooted in Berlin's agreements, entrenched poverty, and dependency that many African nations still struggle to overcome. Today, the borders drawn in 1884 to 1885 remain largely intact, a testament to their enduring impact. While African nations gained independence in the mid-20th century, the legacy of the Berlin Conference lingers in ethnic conflicts, political instability, and economic challenges. For instance, the Rwandan genocide of 1994, while complex, was partly rooted in colonial divisions between Hutu and Tutsi groups, exacerbated by Belgian policies that favored one over the other. Similarly, disputes over resource-rich regions, like the oil fields of South Sudan, trace back to borders that ignored local realities. The Berlin Conference was a moment when 14 men, in 100 days, reshaped a continent without ever setting foot on its soil. Their decisions, driven by greed, ignorance, and ambition, left Africa with a legacy of division and exploitation. Yet, the conference also underscores the resilience of African peoples, who resisted, adapted, and eventually reclaimed their sovereignty. Understanding this history is not just an academic exercise. It's a step toward recognizing the roots of modern Africa and the global inequalities that persist. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 was a turning point in world history, a moment when a handful of men in a Berlin room redrew Africa's future with devastating consequences. From Bismarck's calculated diplomacy to Leopold's genocidal exploitation of the Congo, the conference exposed the raw ambition of European imperialism. Its arbitrary borders, drawn in just 100 days, ignored Africa's rich tapestry of cultures and set the stage for a century of turmoil. By uncovering hidden facts like the fraudulent treaties, the technological triggers, and the staggering death toll in the Congo, we see the true cost of those decisions. This history is not just a story of the past. It's a lens through which we can understand Africa's present and the global forces that continue to shape our world.